Welcome to TimeFrame Unveiled, where history's hidden stories come to life. Imagine this, a nation torn apart by war, where the fight for freedom wasn't just on the battlefield, it was a battle for identity, for justice, for a future. Today, we're diving into the African-American experience during the Civil War, a story of struggle, resilience, and transformation that reshaped America forever. From the chains of slavery to the dawn of emancipation and the rocky road of Reconstruction, this 15-minute journey will uncover the triumphs and challenges faced by African Americans in one of history's most pivotal moments. Hit that subscribe button and let's travel back to 1861, a time when everything changed. Chapter 1. The evolution and politics of slavery. Let's start with the roots of the conflict. By 1861, slavery wasn't just an economic system, it was a deeply entrenched institution that defined the South. Over 4 million African Americans were enslaved, forced to work on plantations, in homes and in factories, their lives controlled by a brutal system of oppression. But slavery wasn't static. It had evolved over centuries, shaped by politics, economics, and resistance. In the early 1800s, the invention of the cotton gin made cotton king, fueling a massive demand for enslaved labor. The South's economy boomed, but at a horrific cost. Enslaved people endured backbreaking work, family separations, and constant violence. Laws like the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 tightened the grip, forcing even free African Americans in the North to live in fear of being kidnapped and sold into slavery. Politically, slavery was a ticking time bomb. The North and South were locked in a bitter struggle over its expansion. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 and the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 tried to balance power, but they only deepened the divide. Abolitionists like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman fought tirelessly, Douglass with his powerful speeches, Tubman with her daring underground railroad missions, risking her life to lead hundreds to freedom. But the South doubled down, arguing slavery was a positive good. When Abraham Lincoln, an anti-slavery Republican, won the presidency in 1860, the South seceded, fearing the end of their way of life. That's when the Civil War began, and with it, a new chapter for African Americans. Chapter 2. African Americans in the War, fighting for freedom. As the war erupted, African Americans saw an opportunity to fight for their freedom. In the North, free black men rushed to enlist, but at first, they were turned away. Lincoln feared arming black soldiers would push border states to join the Confederacy. Yet by 1862, with the Union desperate for troops, attitudes shifted. The Second Confiscation Act allowed the Union to seize enslaved people from Confederate owners. And soon, African Americans were forming regiments like the 54th Massachusetts, led by figures like Robert Gould Shaw. These black soldiers were heroes, but they faced immense discrimination. They were paid less than white soldiers, $10 a month compared to $13, and often given inferior equipment. Still, they fought with unmatched courage. At the Battle of Fort Wagner in 1863, the 54th Massachusetts led a daring charge, losing nearly half their men, but proving their valor. Sergeant William Carney became the first African American to earn the Medal of Honor for saving the regiment's flag. In the South, enslaved people took matters into their own hands. Hundreds of thousands fled plantations, seeking refuge with Union armies as contrabands. They worked as laborers, spies, and guides, their knowledge of Southern terrain invaluable. Women like Harriet Tubman served as nurses and scouts, while men like Robert Smalls stole a Confederate ship, sailing it to Union lines and securing freedom for his family. African Americans didn't just wait for freedom, they seized it, becoming a driving force in the Union's victory. Chapter 3. The Emancipation and its Impact Now. let's talk about the turning point, the Emancipation Proclamation. On January 1st, 1863, Lincoln issued this historic order, declaring that all enslaved people in Confederate-held territory were forever free. It didn't free everyone. Slavery continued in border states loyal to the Union, but it changed the war's purpose. Suddenly, the fight was about liberty, not just union. For African Americans, the proclamation was a beacon of hope. Word spread like wildfire, often carried by Union soldiers or escaping enslaved people. In places like Beaufort, South Carolina, freed people gathered to celebrate, singing spirituals and reading the proclamation aloud. But freedom came with challenges. Many fled to Union camps, only to find overcrowding, disease, and starvation. Some were forced into labor contracts that felt like slavery by another name. Still, the proclamation empowered African Americans to fight harder. Over 180,000 black soldiers and sailors joined the Union cause, tipping the scales of the war. When the war ended in 1865, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery nationwide. 4 million African Americans were finally free, but the road ahead was far from easy. Freedom meant building new lives, finding family members torn apart by slavery, establishing schools, and creating communities. Figures like Booker T. Washington, who was 9 when freed, later wrote about the joy and uncertainty of those days as freed people took their first steps toward self-determination. Chapter 4: Reconstruction, a promise. Unfulfilled. With the war over, Reconstruction began, a 12-year period from 1865 to 1877 meant to rebuild the South and secure rights for African Americans. At first, there was hope. The Freedmen's Bureau was established to provide food, education, and legal aid to freed people. African Americans seized the chance to learn. By 1870, thousands of black schools and churches had sprung up, often led by black teachers and ministers. Politically, African Americans made strides. The 14th and 15th Amendments granted citizenship and voting rights to black men, and for the first time, black leaders like Hiram Revels and Blanche K. Bruce were elected to Congress. In the South, black voters helped elect biracial governments that passed progressive laws, like funding public schools for all. But the promise of Reconstruction was crushed by resistance. White Southerners, bitter over their defeat, formed groups like the Ku Klux Klan, using violence to terrorize black communities. Lynchings, beatings, and arson became common, aimed at keeping African Americans in their place. By 1877, Northern support for Reconstruction waned, and the Compromise of 1877 ended federal oversight in the South. Jim Crow laws soon followed, enforcing segregation and stripping away black rights. Sharecropping trapped many in a cycle of debt, a new form of bondage. Chapter 5: Long-term consequences, scars and seeds of change. The African American experience during the Civil War left a lasting legacy. On one hand, the war ended slavery and gave African Americans a foothold in society. They built families, schools, and churches that became the backbone of black culture. Leaders like Frederick Douglass inspired future generations to fight for equality, laying the groundwork for the civil rights movement a century later. But the scars were deep. The failure of Reconstruction meant African Americans faced decades of systemic racism, from segregation to voter suppression. The promise of 40 acres and a mule for freed people was never fulfilled, leaving most in poverty. The trauma of slavery and violence lingered, passed down through generations, shaping the African American experience well into the 20th century. Yet, amidst the hardship, there was resilience. African Americans never stopped fighting. Through education, art, and activism, they preserved their history and pushed for justice. The Civil War wasn't just a war. It was a rebirth, a moment when African Americans claimed their place in America's story, even if the nation wasn't ready to fully embrace them. Closing, a legacy of courage. The African American experience during the Civil War is a testament to the power of hope and determination. From the shackles of slavery to the struggle for equality, African Americans didn't just survive, they shaped history, proving that freedom is worth fighting for. As we reflect on this pivotal era, let's honor their legacy by continuing to learn and grow. Thanks for joining me on this journey with TimeFrame Unveiled. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We've got more history to uncover together. What's next? Drop a comment and let me know which topic you want to explore. Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video on TimeFrame Unveiled.